Well, hello there.
Good morning, Thomas.
Good morning.
How are you this morning?
I am so good. How are you?
Good.
Good.
So before we started diving into some other topics, I was noticing on the schedule, and you brought this up as well,
Yeah.
that we have a church administration meeting coming up in about a week and a half.
Yep.
And so I know that for myself, I've sat through those meetings before in the last several years, and just sort of, like you hear things and you start to understand what's going on,
Sure.
and sometimes you get the why and the broken down,
Yeah.
but other times you just sort of like, well, why do we have the certain things, or why are we doing certain things in the way we're doing? And so you suggested that we go through some of our bylaws and some of the things, what makes us separate as a church from other places, and sort of like explore a little bit of the why of why we do that, so that when we go into that meeting next week, our church members can sort of be a little bit more informed from that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think just to start with is like our bylaws are super important, right? They are the governing body or the governing document of our church. And so in the same way that maybe like the Constitution and the amendments to the Constitution would be like the overarching governing documents for a nation, right? In that same kind of way, our Constitution and bylaws are what dictates how a church operates. And I recognize that like spiritual people would say, well, we just operate the way the Bible tells us to operate, which is good, and we should.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Except for the Bible doesn't actually say anything about like when meetings are supposed to happen, or when and how deacons are supposed to be chosen. There's an example of how they were chosen in Acts, but even that's a little bit ambiguous about who voted when and who chose what and all of those things, and like how long did they serve and what was there's some ambiguity there that we don't want to have when we're dealing with the administration of our local church. And so so with that, then I think it's important that we need to then know what the bylaws say so that we can live by them. Bylaws are not an unchanging document. They can change actually fairly easily. And we'll talk maybe in just a few minutes about like how that would happen at Harvest. But bylaws can change. That's not a problem. But what the bylaws say is how the church should currently be operating. Like whatever the guidelines are, whatever is laid out in that document is how we ought to be operating today. Now, if we don't like that, we can change it.
Right.
But it has to be done that way for right now. And so with that, then coming up to this administration meeting, I think it's really important to have a conversation about some of those pieces, especially in those bylaws. There are some pieces that directly talk to why we have that meeting like we have it. And so if I'm remembering correctly, it's Article 6 of our bylaws specifically talks that we have to have an annual administration meeting, and even gives an outline of what is included in that meeting. So there has to be a time of prayer. There has to be a report from the officers. So our financial report has to be in a part of that. Our members who have been added to the congregation, to the church body, need to be acknowledged during that meeting. And it doesn't have to be like stand up and wave high, but like it needs to just they need to be, hey, these are the people that were added to the church body in the last year. People who have left the church body for whatever reason. And even some of the reasons why a member their membership could be automatically terminated, that's in the bylaws. And you have to have that stuff because it's a privilege to have church membership, and for someone abusing church membership or trying to have membership at multiple churches and like if you don't have these, like, no, sorry, you can only be a member at one church, and like then suddenly it's like, well, yeah, you didn't say that, it doesn't say that, like that's so these are the like preventing those kinds of things. Of course, the probably the biggest and most important part of our bylaws is our statement of faith. And so it is it is the largest single section of our bylaws, though it is probably on purpose not the most confusing part. There are certainly parts that are way more confusing.
Sure.
But that part is we try to make it simple as possible and still be thorough. And just lay out, hey, this is what Harvest believes, and about everything that we think is important, that is important because as somebody comes to join a church and they want to be a part of Harvest, put their candle on that candlestick, to use some Revelation terms.
Sure.
Then we're like that statement of faith is the statement that, like, hey, this is where we all need to be in agreement. We can disagree on some things outside of this. And honestly, there's probably even some pieces of that we can disagree on to some degree, right? Obviously, there's just levels of how things work that way. But when we're talking about a statement of faith, it really is an issue that we ought to be in agreement, or at least be okay with where we are in disagreement. Right? So if somebody believes, hey, I think Jesus is coming back at a different time than a pre-tribulation rapture, that's fine. I don't really care.
Yeah.
Jesus is going to handle that.
Sure.
and he's not going to be. You're not going to get left behind because you believe something different. Right?
That's not a salvation issue.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. But Harvest absolutely teaches, like, we have a statement about what we believe as a church, and so that needs to be what, if somebody is teaching a Sunday school class, or if during preaching and teaching that comes up, there should never be it shouldn't be an argument, it shouldn't be a fight. Like, oh, well, you said that again. Like, of course we said that again. That's what we believe.
Yeah.
And so, like, those things you have to just know that, and like so I think that the bylaws work together to both give us they strive to bring unity, because no one would join if we don't agree with this statement, right? That statement of faith. And then they show how we can live and operate in a decent and in order kind of way in the church life that we're living in. And so, yeah, that's some of the whys. I don't know, I kind of got distracted there in the middle, but yeah.
Yeah. So, like, looking at the bylaws and looking at the importance of them, before we start looking at the specific portions of what our bylaws are, and like, what are your thoughts on, though, like separating out and distinguishing the church as a church body of Christ, and what it is, and a church as an organization, like as almost like a business, right? Sure. And so, like, this is not the feeling from the other perspective of this whole conversation. This is not the feeling or the perspective that Jesus really talks about within the church body, or even, like, looking into other portions of the New Testament where the church is talked about. It's sort of somewhat similar to Old Testament and that like model. Like, how do you make these things come together and play nice?
Yeah. Well, I think first and foremost, we started by saying that, like, the Bible is the real governing document for a church, right? So that has to be foundational or overarching. Okay. And so our statement of faith isn't just like what we think, right? It's what the Bible says, and to the best of our ability, we're interpreting the Bible accurately, and so then our statement of faith reflects that. Every other part of that, and there are some pieces there that the Bible informs every other piece. I'm thinking about every bylaws that I've ever read, and I've read a number of them when I had to work on ours and stuff like that over the last 15 years. Every other set of bylaws that I've ever read for every other church has a statement about how members can't sue other members. Okay. And that comes directly from Corinthians. Yeah. Right. And like, and so it's like, that seems so silly, but also, like, because the Bible talks about that, then it gets added in, right? Yeah. And it's like, hey, we need to make sure. And so I think that, like, as far as like the administration side, I mean, the truth is the Bible probably doesn't speak a lot about New Testament church administration, right? It has some, like, it's not that there's nothing, but we are inferring much. There's little prescription. There's lots of description. There's little, like, this is how church life should be. And so we're doing our best to handle that, recognizing that we can't just wing it.
Sure.
Right? That would go in the face of decently ended order.
It does seem like it has more to do with stewardship.
Yeah, exactly.
Which
right.
scriptures talks extensively about.
Exactly right.
And
Yep.
so, I could see that and understand that. Yeah.
I had a conversation with a couple of pastors recently, and somebody pointed out that administration, whether that's talking about like bylaws or whether that's even like delegation, but church administration is a vehicle. It's a vehicle for getting the gospel out, right? It's so that we're working together to get this thing done. And we see church administration happen in the New Testament, right? Now, what we don't see is the behind the scenes of like, did somebody write this down and like they were operating based, or was like Peter just like, yeah, we'll do it like this time, right? Like, we don't see that part of it.
Yeah.
And to be fair, like, I mean, we're talking Acts, this is all brand new. And so some of that is, they're working through that in some of those logistical ways, I think, is just part of it. And
You could probably say it wasn't also needed, like
Exactly.
if 2 or 3 people were gathered,
Right.
and because of persecution, not specifically because
Right.
they didn't want to come together and worship together.
Yep.
It
Probably a little different.
It was a little different, a different feel, significantly less resources to steward.
Yep.
All those things. Yeah, absolutely.
I also, it just, 2026 United States of America is different than first century Middle East, right? And that's exactly what you said. But just to put that we are in a different time and space, and because of that, then we're not governed. Like there's no, like, the United States government isn't like overseeing anything that happens here. But also that gives room for churches to abuse the benefits that a government gives them. And so then in order to play nice, like, bylaws are something that has to happen. And so there's all kinds of different things like that too that are at play here. And so are you going to find a spot where it's like in the Bible, it's like, thou shalt write section 4.2 about the, no, of course not.
Yeah.
Right. But the idea of stewardship and administration is all over the Bible, and Jesus isn't displeased that we do things decently and in order. And so, in fact, that's how his work should be done.
Sure.
Yeah. I don't know. That's tough.
I mean, that's
that it is.
I don't think there's necessarily one right way. I think like you said, stewarding his things and his resources for his glory.
Yep.
I think is pleasing to him.
Yep, that's right.
And so, like, there's probably different ways to do it. There probably is wrong ways to do these things as well. I'm
Probably so.
positive about that.
Yeah, that's right. Probably not doing anything.
Yeah.
Maybe wrong. It's like
or abusing.
or abusing. Yeah. Absolutely.
But I think that the organization piece is also an important piece.
Yeah, absolutely.
So-
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah.
So going into the administration meeting that we have coming up, do you want to explore that and look sort of like as far as the different parts and why we sort of do different things and how they coordinate with our bylaws?
Yeah. So when I took over pastoring in August of 24, recognizing that I was going to host that first administration meeting, right? And I was had never done that before. Was a little bit terrified, and so I went to the bylaws and was like, okay, what are we doing? How are we doing this? And what I discovered is probably too strong of a word.
Yeah.
But what was there was it's an outline for how that administration meeting is supposed to go. And so there are 12 pieces that are absolutely supposed to be in that meeting. And so they go from devotions, prayer, reading of minutes, reception of members, dismissal of members, the report of officers, report of standing committees, report of special committees, unfinished matters, election of new officers, new matters, adjournment, and benediction. Right? And so some of that is literally like a benediction was literally like a thanks for being here. Have a good night. Right.
Sure.
That kind of like, I mean, it was that kind of, but like there, in the devotion and prayer, we do it at the end of our evening service. So we just had a preaching service and somebody prays to open this meeting up. Right. Like, so some of that is like, but that's the order, right? That's what we do. And so what I did last year and what I intend to do this year is I actually just created a document and had those 12 headings on the document, and under each one, I just did I nearly created a script. Like, this is what we're going to say, this is what we're going to do, including how motions and stuff like that are done, because our bylaws are a little bit interesting, and motions are done in a way that is different than most other businesses.
Okay.
So most businesses, somebody presents new matters, right? So, or somebody says, hey, this is what we're looking at. These are the 7 options we can do. And somebody makes a motion. Hey, I want to try option 2, right? Somebody seconds that motion and we move on. But from our bylaws, the way that works is actually the moderator of the meeting makes the motion, which is different than most places. Most of the time, the moderator isn't doing that.
Yeah.
But so the moderator of the meeting is making the motion, at which point there needs to be a second from the floor, and then there's a vote on whether or not that motion passes from the floor. And so that's different. And so that was a significant difference in how we had been maybe handling that before. And so I just had that written down, like, hey, this is exactly how it is, and this is what the bylaws say right there, and it's right there in the section 3 or section C of section 6, and so that's right there, and so we follow that. If we don't like it, we can change it, but as long as it's in there, we have to do it that way.
Yeah.
Right? And so that was one thing, and then I just walked through those things. We read last year's minutes, and then we acknowledged those people that joined Harvest this last year, and had them listed out and read their names. And then we read the names of people that were no longer members, and whether that was because they hadn't been here in our bylaws, it's 6 months if you don't attend a service in 6 months, unless I think the wording is providentially hindered because of sickness or something like that, then your membership is terminated.
Yeah.
And there's other reasons too, of course. But that one is maybe the one that happens the most often. If you start attending another church, then your membership here is terminated.
Yeah.
Right? And so, and we don't vote on that. That's just what it is. There's no voting. It's like, if you weren't here, you weren't here. And if you started going somewhere else, you started going somewhere else. Like, there's no, like, I think we should do that. Right? That's what the bylaws say. So we don't vote on it. We just do that. And then going through those different reports, and that's probably what our administration meeting is most known for, is those reports. We talk about where we spent money last year, kind of give an account of where that is, which is actually really good for a church family, because Harvest is funded by church members.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, there's regular attenders who give. There's people who occasionally there's occasionally we get a check from people we don't even know who saw us online or whatever. And so that happens occasionally, not often, but occasionally. Yeah. But by and large, Harvest is funded by people who go to church here. And church members are also the ones that have the say in what that. Now, because of how our bylaws work, the congregation actually has given most of the authority to handle purchases and finances and paying bills and all that kind of stuff to the pastor and the treasurer, so that we don't have to have a meeting every week and say, hey, do we vote to pay the light bill this week?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Do I have it first? No,
everybody wants heat.
Right. Exactly. So we just do those things, right? And then we do our best to stick in the budget that we voted on, and that kind of gives us the direction of where we're headed. And so we'll give a report about how that went. And there's some things there's our power, not our power bill, our natural gas bill this last year was way higher than it was last year, and I don't know exactly what happened there, but it was way higher than it. And so there's obviously, so we'll talk about that. Hey, hey, somebody left the heater on or something.
Yeah.
And so we're gonna need to work on that, right? And so we'll talk through some of those things, and hopefully most of that is silly in that way. Like, well, I mean, it was high. What do? We pay the bill. We do better next time, right?
Yeah.
But also if there's questions, or if we're like, hey, wait, I didn't know we were doing this. How come this wasn't in the budget? We can give an account of those things, and that's really, really important.
Does the church give or like have an allowances or like a way for members to ask questions about these things somewhat outside of the church meeting? Because generally speaking, and thinking back from previous administration meetings, like the same three people ask questions.
Yeah, sure.
Right. And so, and that's not bad by any
yeah.
means, but I mean, and some people probably don't have anything concerns or questions, but like, like how could that look like to be able to like allow people to ask questions outside of?
Yeah, that's a fair question. Well, so first of all, you are all any member of Harvest is allowed to look at any part of our records. There's some personal there's some sensitive information as far as like who gave what. You don't get to see that, right? And you don't get to see like phone numbers and addresses for all of our members. Like, you don't get to see that kind of stuff, right? So that personal information is there. But if you want to see what came in last week, you just have to ask.
Yeah.
The person that you could either ask me or you could ask Caitlin. Either one of those. If we suddenly had like 45 people asking every week, we would probably our bylaws specifically state that we can require that those requests be made in writing so that we can keep track of them.
Sure.
Not to add extra bureaucracy, but like so that we can keep track and get you the information
So people don't get lost.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So currently nobody asked. So you could just come up and ask me and I would get that done.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like, that's fine. But it does take time because we're digging through and have to make sure we print the reports and all that kind of stuff. And so it's not so don't expect that that's happening like that moment. I think that we have like a week. Again, I hear it's in the bylaws and I forget which section that was in, but I think there's like a week that you get it back the next Sunday or something like that. But yeah, you could ask about any of those kind of things. The other thing that I've tried to do is this report, or like the minute, or not the minutes, the agenda. There we go. The agenda for our 2026 administration meeting will be out the Sunday morning before that meeting. So that meeting happens after church Sunday night. So I will have I'll have the agenda out ahead of time. And it's only a few hours, but you'll be able to look through and see like the big highlights. And if there are questions, you can shoot me a text message in the afternoon, or you can come ready to that meeting with a question. So you don't have to like think about how you're going to word it in the moment after having only seen the document for 3 minutes. And so tried to help with some of that in some of those ways. But yeah, you're welcome to come and chat with me about it anytime. Honestly, here's the thing is this isn't my church, right? This is Harvest's church, and maybe even more appropriately, Jesus's church.
Yeah.
That we get to be a part of. And so then like as that we're working together on this thing, and there's some things that wouldn't be appropriate to share, but hey, how much did we bring in last year? That is your business, and so feel free. Like, I'm happy to talk about that. Hey, what was last month comparatively to the month before? I'm happy to talk about that. Right? Hey, did we see an increase in our happy to talk about all those kinds of questions. Yeah. There are some things that I'm going to tell you. Sorry, that's not yours, but it has pretty much always to do with personal giving information and that kind of stuff. So yeah,
interesting.
Yep.
Okay. So where did we leave off within the things that we wanted to cover? We covered the meetings for church administration.
Yep.
We covered a little bit about the motions.
Yeah. I think probably the thing that I would want to make sure and talk about before we wrap up here, and recognizing that we have certainly not covered everything that the bylaws that we could talk about there. And I would encourage anyone and everyone to get a copy and read it. It would be so good for you. And you would, it's riveting. I'm confident.
Yep. I've read over them multiple times, and I feel like taking naps every time.
Yeah, it feels like a legal document, right?
Yeah.
Kind of is.
Yeah.
So the one other thing that I would make sure I really want to talk about, and of course anything that you want to add to the end of this would be great, but if we ever needed to change, and if we ever needed to change our bylaws, how that happens. Okay. So first, it's very likely that we will need to change things up in the future. That's not because what we have is bad or because it's not sufficient or anything like that. But the bylaws are designed to help navigate life as it is right now, like both church life and and the culture in which we live, right? So the last time we changed our bylaws, we added in some more clear language about what we believe about human sexuality.
Okay.
Right? And so talked through some of the transgender issues and some things like that. And that was a number of years ago. And probably some of those things may even need to be readjusted, as time goes on, because we are not only dealing with we're not only dealing with what the Bible says, but we're also dealing with how a culture is going to interact with our church, right? And so we're going from two directions here. And so there may be times where we decide, hey, we need to adjust this. Most of our adjustments will probably be wording issues and just adjusting those kinds of things. But there may be times where we would need to adjust, a section or change. Hey, we don't like the deacons only serve a 3-year term. We want them to serve a life term, or sounds like they're going to jail, or we only want them to serve a year, or whatever, right? However the case might be, right? And so when those kinds of things come up, and we've decided that that's what's going to happen, the way that changes work is we would make a motion to the church family that we would make those changes. And so we would have the conversation with our church family, hey, we're going to look at this. And then we would, me, the deacons, whoever is involved in that special committee, which is a thing that can happen in point 7 of our list of things that happen on the bylaws or on the administration meeting. Those people would come together. They're going to work on those changes, and then both of those changes are submitted to the church family and say, "Hey, review these. Right? We haven't changed anything yet, but this is what we're hoping to change."
Yeah.
We go back to the drawing board as many times as we can until finally that vote passes. At which point, then our new bylaws are in effect, and we would then operate underneath those. And so, again, changing bylaws is actually included in the bylaws. How you change them is included in them. Yeah. And so, following those is essentially the rule, right? Like you follow the bylaws to change the bylaws, and that's. But it's not a untouchable document. This isn't the Bible, right? We don't change the Bible. But these are the bylaws are something that we probably do have to look at and probably need to be reviewed fairly often. It's probably as a group of deacons, it's something that we probably need to put on the calendar more regularly. Right now, it's only been 1.5 years since I came in. I'd reviewed them before that. You guys all read them as I was coming in, and so we had spent a lot of time with them in the last 18 months, and so that's why we haven't put something on the calendar at this point. But that's something that will happen, right? Because it's like, hey, maybe it's all good.
Yeah. I do think evaluating and looking at them again is an important piece for continued growth, for good growth, not necessarily growth or change for change.
Yeah, right, exactly.
I think obviously, as the deacons are the ones of the church body that obviously aren't the only ones who have access.
Of course, yeah.
But they're probably the ones who have read them the most.
Yeah, probably.
I
hope so.
I mean, I think it was the first time I read the bylaws when I was voted in, or just prior to being voted in as deacon. And so I think it's important to be able to know what you're voting on or what you're making decisions on 100%. And why. I think also like maybe it's something we look at. We put that meeting for the deacons to evaluate them like about a year and a half, halfway through their term.
Oh, sure.
So that, like they've had sort of like an exposure time of having to like be in the position and making decisions and like, this doesn't make sense. Well, we really should do it this way because, like this, like this just makes, whatever. Right. And so I think that's a good idea. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. It's definitely it's definitely something that it needs to be. It doesn't need to be on the front burner all the time.
Sure.
But it needs to be addressed, right? That pot needs to be stirred occasionally to make sure that we're not letting it boil over and causing ourselves trouble in the end. And also making sure that we're actually following through. And so honestly, it just seems like every time I read them, I'm like, oh, I forgot about that part. Like I've read them dozens of times, but like every time I'm looking for something different, right? Yeah. So that's been a little bit of a thing there. It's like every time I'm like, oh, I forgot about that part. That's right, that piece is there, and so that's just that familiarity needs to be a part of it.
Sure.
So yeah, absolutely. This is a riveting conversation.
It is,
and I could honestly like I joke about that, but honestly, I love that we live in a time and a place that like we get to do this right and well. And we have the opportunity to anyway. Whether we're doing it right or well is up for debate, maybe. But
it's not the most riveting. It's not the most stimulating conversation necessarily. But I do think it's an important conversation to have.
Yep.
In the same line of stewardship, to be able to understand and know that we all come in consensus to be able to progress Jesus's work.
Yeah.
So, about a week and a half from now, the church administration meeting is going to occur.
Yep.
This video is going to take about a week probably to post. Hopefully, people have an opportunity to watch it before the meeting. If not, we get to just jump in and have fun. Yeah. I will say though, if people want to read the bylaws before the meeting, where can they find a copy of them?
Yeah, you can ask me.
Okay,
print them off for you. Currently they are they're housed a couple of different places, but it's easy to get it printed out and shoot me a text message. I'll send you the PDF too. So those are two easy ways. You can ask me on a Sunday, and I will get it after church. We'll not do that probably before church because I'm thinking about other things.
Sure.
But if you remind me immediately following church, I will get it for you at that moment. It's easy to print off. If you send me a text message during the week, I can shoot you the PDF, and that's not going to be a problem.
Awesome.
So, yep.
All right. Well, thank you, Thomas, for sitting down with me.
Appreciate that. Have a good time.
All right.
Every time.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye now.